Welcome back to another rankings video. Today we're going to be looking at the defensive backs. We actually had some interesting things happen. We have a lot of trade talks going on in the league right now. We had a name change, and there was just a lot of interesting things going on. Screw you, Zach. Poopy head. Alright, let's get into it. Number 12, it's J-Bay. J-Bay has Jalen Hawkins and Sean Chandler. I've never heard of Sean Chandler in my life in all the years I've been watching football. But not only is he not starting, not only is he ass, but he's also suspended, probably for being black. So he's not really going to be doing much. He has Jalen Hawkins, who has a chance to potentially score fantasy points at some point this season if Richie Grant does bad, I guess. Yeah, I'm kind of stretching it here for you. This is ass. I've wiped my ass with toilet paper that worked better here. Coming in at number 11, we have Booty Basher. Booty Basher has Julian Love and said Richie Grant. Julian Love last year was one of the best defensive backs in the league. He was actually a cornerback position that you could put in for some leagues. He played for the Giants. He could be good again this year. I kind of doubt it because he's put in at the safety position behind Jamal Adams and Quandre Diggs, so I don't think he's going to get too much in terms of points. I mean, at least he'll get something, I think, but I don't think he'll be doing too much this year compared to last year. Overall, I'd try to find someone new if I were you. And then Richie Grant, he'll be a solid starter as long as he doesn't get benched because he's really good in terms of fantasy. Oh, he's okay in terms of fantasy, but he's ass in real life. So they could bench him for that Jalen Hawkins you saw over on Mostope's team. But overall, he's still better than Hawkins, and I think he'll be fine with him. Heck, Bates might actually help him get more points. Who knows? Coming in at number 10, we have Scrambled and Wiggle Waggled, of course. Who else would it be? Evan, you finally fall down to earth. You had your one moment of glory, and you already shit it away, going all the way down to the bottom three again. Congratulations. Scrambled and Wiggle Waggled has Tracy Walker and Jonathan Owens. Tracy Walker's a solid safety. I think he'll do pretty solid for you. He'll be probably around middle of the pack, getting you around 10 to 15 points on a good week. I think he'll be consistent. He'll be solid as long as he can stay healthy. Jonathan Owens was actually a really good safety last year, but he switched from the Texans to the Packers, and he got benched multiple times last season on the Texans. Keep in mind, this is the dog shit Texans. And now he's on the Packers, and the Packers, even after losing Adrian Amos, don't have him set to start. He'll probably be splitting snaps, don't get me wrong, but him not even being set to start, it concerns me. I highly doubt he's going to be fantasy proficient this year, kind of like Julian Love, but I guess only time can tell. Overall, I'm not a fan of him. Walker's solid, though. Coming in at number 9, we have Karen's husband. These same people were always at the bottom of the list. Sometimes I would like to see some other people down here. What the heck? All right. Now he has Justin Reed, Isaiah Simmons, and he has, once again, just a guy that nobody on this planet has ever heard of, Ashton Davis. It actually kind of looks like my good buddy Tack over here. It looks just like him for real. Anyway, he has Justin Reed and Isaiah Simmons, and Isaiah Simmons is actually technically marked a linebacker too, so he could use him for both. I think it would be smarter to use him as a safety because linebackers typically get more points. But overall, it doesn't matter too much. I'll rank this guy in both the safety and linebacker videos just because of his dual position. Justin Reed will be okay in fantasy. I don't think he'll be good or great or anything. I think he'll just be eh. Overall, I think he'll just kind of do what he did last year, which wasn't too much. It wasn't too bad. 158, at least he's a starter, which is more than I can say for some of these other guys. And then you also got Isaiah Simmons could be a pretty dang good safety this year in New York because he was very underwhelming in Arizona, not in terms of his skill, but in terms of fantasy. People like Buda Baker would eat up all of his tackles and he wouldn't really get to play much. But maybe in New York, he actually gets to play a good bit and he could be really good. Who knows? Overall, if you get rid of Davis, you could literally take anyone else on this earth and it would probably be an improvement. Other than that, this is not the worst, but yeah, there's a lot better. Coming in at number 8, we have Big Yawners. Big Yawners has Minkah Fitzpatrick and Kyle Hamilton. Now, I'm a big Minkah Fitzpatrick fan. I think he could be an elite safety in this league, one of the few actually. But there is some things to mention though. Throughout the entire preseason, out of all the snaps he played, he did not get a single stat in anything, not in terms of fantasy, real life, anything. Most of these other guys that have came in for Pittsburgh pretty much took all the tackles, all the big plays away. Now, I don't know if that'll carry over into the regular season by any means. Who knows? But it's something worth mentioning. Overall, I think he'll have a good year overall still, and he's a very good safety, number one. This is where I have a problem with your safeties, though. Kyle Hamilton. He had a solid year last year, don't get me wrong, or an okay year at least. But I don't think he's going to do as good as he did last year because they're getting Mike Williams back over at their safety core. So overall, I don't think he's going to do as good as he even did last year. I think these projections are kind of lying to you. I would look for someone else if I were you. There's probably some better guys on free agency. You just got to know where to look. Um, Overall, I think he's really holding Minkah back in the safety room. Alrighty, coming in at number 7. You guys all knew he was coming up soon. Sooner or later. He's usually in the bottom 4, but you know what? He's reaching for new records today. We got MILF, who has Quandre Diggs, Mike Williams, and Grant Delpit. Now, Quandre Diggs, he did good last year. He actually did pretty dang solid last year. I think he'll fall back compared to how he did last year for 2 reasons. One, they're getting Bobby Wagner returning. So right off the bat, I think a good chunk of these tackles he's been farming up are going to go away. And then also they're getting Julian Love, as you saw over on, I believe it was Booty Basher's team. That's probably going to be coming in and maybe rotating snaps with either him or this next name I'm about to mention, Jamal Adams, returning. All around, there's all these guys returning that are probably just going to mean that he's going to have a downgraded year overall. I don't see these guys coming back helping him. That's just a lot more people to take the tackles away from him, you know what I mean? I don't think he'll do nearly as good as he did last year. Mike Williams, I think he's solid. He was actually one of the highest scoring safeties in the league in the weeks he was healthy, but he kept getting hurt last year. I don't think he's anything special. I think that was kind of like a few week hit wonder, but who knows? He could do good if he stays healthy. So he definitely has upside. Grant Delpit is probably one of the most consistent safeties you can get in all of fantasy. Like, even some of these elite guys are sometimes boom or bust. This guy is a tackling machine, so he'll probably get you a good 10 to 15 points, kind of like that Tracy Walker over on Scramble's team, except I like this guy more. I think either way, I think they're both going to be average or consistent guys that you'd want if you weren't able to make the draft, for example, or draft defensive players. Solid additions overall. So you're right around the middle of the pack, just on the lower end. And then these top 6 were actually pretty hard to rank, especially the top 5. But number 6 is actually myself. I have Budda Baker and Rashawn Jenkins. Budda Baker, starting in, I believe, 2018, went a few years in a row as the number 1 scoring safety in all of fantasy. And then he started getting hit with injuries, and they also pulled him back from, I believe it was from strong safety to free safety, or maybe it was vice versa. I'm honestly forgetting at this point. But either way, he's kind of fallen off since then. And they said they're returning him to his original safety position this year. So we'll have to see how that goes. I don't know if they're going to follow through with that, but he has the potential to be one of the top safeties in the league, if not the best one, especially with Arizona just dumping their entire defense off for a bag of Scooby snacks. Rashawn Jenkins was one of the best safeties in all of fantasy football last year. He's just playing for the Jaguars. He might be a one-hit wonder, but overall I think he was pretty good for him. I think he'll have a solid year. I would say the only reason I'm not higher on this list or in the top 5 is because I don't have a third. And all 5 of the top guys have a solid third or an elite third safety option. So that's why they're all up there. Coming in at number 5, we have Pussy. Now this might be a little bit of a shocker, but I'm guessing, Pussy, if you're watching this, I'm guessing you're expecting to be higher, if not number 1. I actually think you got rid of the wrong safety in that trade with Rick Tatership. I think if you would have gotten rid of, say, L'Jarius Sneed, I think your safety core would have been ranked higher and his would have been ranked lower. I really like that Petre guy, but here's the thing. I like L'Jarius Sneed and Derwin James, don't get me wrong, that's why you're in the top 5 still. But They're both injury prone to hell and back. Even though Derwin James, it says he's healthy, he's been injury prone his entire career. I don't think I don't think that's something that should go unmentioned overall. L'Jarius Sneed being a corner, I think he's going to be a little bit overrated in terms of fantasy. It's very rare that corners have back-to-back elite years. He blew up last year. Don't get me wrong, I love the guy, but if this was a league where you could have a cornerback spot, I think he would be worth it. But overall, I don't think he'll be as good as expectations are. And then I noticed you picked up Ricardo Neal earlier. He went to Tampa Bay and replaced a guy named Mike Edwards, who got a lot of tackles and actually had a lot of fantasy points he got every year. So overall, I think he'll do good. I'm back. The FBI just swatted my door. Anyway, I'm back. Where was I? Oh, Ricardo Neal. I think he has a lot of upside. I think he's a bit risky. In real life, he's a terrible safety. And part of the reason Seattle didn't go further in the playoffs or maybe win more games last year, he was horrible all around. In terms of fantasy, he was actually really good, putting up a solid like 15 or so points per game pretty consistently whenever he was starting over Jamal Adams. Um, Overall, I think he has upside playing in Tampa Bay. It kind of is a good scheme for him. Like I said, he could do really good, but until I see that, I can't really rank him too high here. It's a high risk backup, which is what you kind of want at this point in the season. But overall, I think the guys above you have either more consistent or overall better safety options or DB options. Coming in at number 4, we have PMC Wagner. PMC Wagner has Jaquan Brisker, Jordan Poyer, and Antoine Winfield. Jordan Poyer has been one of the best safeties in the league for a few years now. I actually think he'll have a pretty good year this year. He's had a lot of injuries in his career that have held him back, especially over these last few years. But when he is healthy, he is one of the more consistent safeties in the league. Jaquan Brisker was hit or miss last year. Even when he stayed healthy, he would go from scoring 6 points in a week to scoring 15 to 20 points in a week. So it's just a matter of finding consistency with him. He can be pretty dang good, though. But I think he might have a fallback year this year just because the Bears got TJ Edwards. They got, what's his name already? Tremaine Edmunds. Yeah, that's it. Tremaine Edmunds is how you pronounce it. So I think he's going to lose a lot of his tackles here that he had last year. I think he'll actually fall back a bit. While I do think Poyer will go up because they lost Edmunds on that side of the ball, or in Buffalo. So overall, you kind of get the good and bad side of that coin with those two. Winfield is another one that's boom or bust by the week. He can have points where I've seen him go up to like 30 points. He can have weeks where he goes to like 10. He's very boom or bust as well, but I think these guys all have very good upside that hold you over. And I would still rather have these 3 than the 3 that you saw with, say, Pussy, for example. I think Pussy might have a better duo, but as a trio, these guys are definitely way better. And I also like their upside almost as much as Pussy, which is what pushed you over the edge on them. Coming in at number 3, we have Rick Tatership. As I was saying earlier, I'm a big Jalen Pitre fan in terms of fantasy this season. Jalen Pitre was actually the number 1 scoring defensive back in the entire league last year with 297. That's even higher than the Budda Baker numbers I was talking about earlier. Not to mention, he was a rookie and he's actually really good in real life. So he's pretty much filling out all the green boxes you could want. He's probably the number 1 highest upside out of any safety in the league this year. Not only that, Houston also lost Christian Kirksey. They did gain Denzel Perryman, but he's had a huge injury list in his career. But I do think Jalen Pitre will have a very good year yet again. I don't see anything changing for him. If anything, it helps that Jonathan Owens guy went to Green Bay, as you saw, scrambled and wiggle-waggled. So I think he'll have a very, very good year. Justin Simmons is basically the equivalent of Jordan Poyer, as you just saw on PMC, where he's one of the most consistent safeties in the league. Usually he'll get like 13 to 20 points, depending on the week, sometimes a bit more. But overall, he does have a lot of injuries. Plus, the Broncos have just recently got a pretty consistent linebacking core with Alex Singleton, and as you saw with the last guy, PMC, Josey Jewell, although we didn't talk about him yet. So he might not do as good as he's done in years past, but overall I think he'll still be solid. And then Jalen Thompson, he's a coin flip. He could be either really good or he'll be a dud because it depends. They lost Isaiah Simmons, so he's not going to be rotating in the backfield for snaps anymore, which is a good thing. He's probably going to do better than he's done in years past. But in years past, he's played without Budda Baker being there because he's been hurt. So let's say last year, I believe he had like 207 points. So he could reach that, but at the same time, he only got that because Baker wasn't there as well. So it's kind of a coin flip on which way you want to look at it. As a bench option, I think there's better guys out there overall, but I can't complain. I think it's solid overall. I think you got a very good starting duo, and I think you got a solid backup. Coming in at number 2, we have the new name himself, Mr. Steeler Girl, okay, who has Tyrann Mathieu, Harrison Smith, Talanoa Hufanga, and CJ Gardner-Johnson. I don't actually know what's going on with Gardner-Johnson. I thought he was going to be a starter for Detroit. I don't know if Yahoo's projections are just whack. Who knows? In years past, he's actually been pretty good in terms of fantasy. But overall, I didn't really count him for much of the reason you were high. Harrison Smith is like Jordan Poyer and what's his name? Not Jesse Bates. My brain is just gone right now. What is the guy's name for Denver? Jesse Simmons. He's basically like them if he could stay healthy. Like Harrison Smith doesn't have that many injuries he deals with. Last year he had a concussion for a few games, but that's it. He still puts up those points. And on top of that, the Vikings lost. Not only did they lose Zadarius Smith, they also lost Eric Kendricks. So I could see this being a very good year in terms of Harrison Smith. I think he's one of the most highly expected safeties in the league, at least for me. Tyrann Mathieu is a boomer bust guy. He's the definition of it. He usually does solid, though. He usually stays consistent with around at least 7 points, at least, but he'll a lot of times put up a good 20 points because he gets picks, stuff like that. So overall, he's a pretty solid option to have. He's a lot better than everybody else's safety 3. And then surprisingly, I'm not sure why you have him on your bench, but you actually have Talanoa Hufanga. Being a big Steeler fan as yourself, Jackson, I thought you'd realize he's been compared to Troy Polamalu since he's been in the NFL. If you watch him play, he plays just like him, where every time he does something, it's a big play. He's not just kind of getting a tackle there, getting a tackle there. If he makes a tackle, odds are he's forcing a fumble or picking a fumble up. He's getting a pick. He's making a huge play happen, and that's what made him so interesting last year. Is he sometimes would get like 30-point games, sometimes he'd get like 20-point games, but usually he'd stay consistent and still get around 8 to 10 points. So I think he has that huge upside on any given week that could just go off. So I really like him and Smith, and I think Matthew's just a solid third. Coming in at number 1, we have Toxic Zenpai. Now, I don't know if you use your first 3-round picks on safeties or what the hell you're doing, but they are really good. So you got Kevin Byard, who is kind of like those boomer bust guys if he didn't have the bust part to him, where he can go with a very minimum of probably around 9 points per week, you can probably say for sure. But not only does he have the high floor and the high ceiling at the same time, he's also, as you see with David Long there on Miami right above, David Long is gone, so Tennessee is not going to have a good linebacker to rely on. So I think he'll get a lot more tackles, a lot more big plays, and I think he'll improve this season compared to how he did in years past. So that's a very good start. You have Cameron Curl, who, when he can stay healthy, is actually one of the highest scoring safeties in the entire league, just like some of these other guys. I know I keep saying that, but there's a lot of guys that get hurt when they play safety. Safety just seems to be a position that gets hurt a lot in the NFL. But overall, he's a very good player, a very good safety too to have. But undisputedly, the biggest ace in the hole you have here that I don't think many people will realize is Jeremy Chinn. So, Jeremy Chinn from last year, Toxic. Not only is he going to be as good as that, where he gets a safe 10 points per game, sometimes has big boomer games with 20-some points per game, with like an average of, say, 15 points per game. Not only that, he's going to go back into the position this year that he was in whenever he blew up his rookie year, where he was making big plays left and right, like that Talanoa Hufanga guy, except almost every single play. I think this guy's going to be in for an even better year. I could see any of these three safeties being a safety one on any team. These safeties are really good, and I think you got a very good team drafted here with your safety core at least. I'm going to try to do the defensive lineman video next. Hopefully Darth doesn't try talking me into listening to another crappy Pink Floyd album, but other than that, I have something to talk to you guys about in the next video as well, involving tomorrow. Have a good one.